Hey y'all, it's Jess. I'm sitting here at the kitchen table at Refuge Farm. I am on a Skype call with my friend Morgan from GoldShaw Farm, and we are now on part 3 of our series about YouTubing. Today we're going to talk about analytics, which is kind of like a big scary thing, and we just want to carry you into this conversation and hopefully help you out in your endeavors on content creation.
Analytics, that's a deep one.
I know. It's hard.
Let me ask you this. So how long did it take you as a YouTuber before you first started to go in there and actually look at the analytics? And then how long did it take you as a YouTuber before you started to go in there and look at the analytics and actually have a sense of what they meant?
I think I probably have a pretty firm grasp on it now, but I mean, it's been within the last year of really being like, okay, I kind of get what this means. And then also having enough information of what I want to like be moved and encouraged by and what I'm going to be like, whatever, it is what it is. You know what I'm talking about? Like there's some things you get enough information that you know what's really important and what's kind of unchangeable.
Yeah, no, it took me a little while, and I actually had a background in marketing, and so, you know, we used to do like analytics for the digital ads we'd run or that sort of thing, and it took me a while to first appreciate that the YouTube analytics are drastically different than any other type of analytics. And they really are their own beast you need to understand. And the first and most important thing to understanding them is knowing what's YouTube trying to achieve, because ultimately what that goal of YouTube is going to drive how they're having the algorithm work, which is going to ultimately drive how you should be thinking about success and what's working and what's not working for your channel.
Yeah, absolutely. One thing like I think is really important to say on the front end is, you know, in the earlier parts of this series, we talked about like the foundational things of being a content creator, which is all about your voice and who you are and, you know, knowing what you're creating and why. And I really believe that that trumps analytics every single time. Like that is the first and foremost thing. And I think it gets reflected in the analytics that actually matters the most. So I want to make sure that if anybody is catching this video without having first watched that one, to make sure that you watch that, because I know my heart, and I think is yours as well, is to encourage people to create something valuable, not just something that is successful in, you know, a numbers way.
Completely agree. I think, you know, this is sort of, if you get to a place where you feel like you have the core of your channel down, you know what your story is, and you're feeling really great about the content you're producing, and now you're trying to understand sort of what's happening and why it's happening, that's when you should turn to your analytics. You shouldn't be turning to your analytics to say, what should I do? You should have that kind of driven from within and driven from your story and who you are. But when you start to try to say, well, what's going on, that's where analytics will help you.
Absolutely. And I've had some friends that do YouTube come over and we get the computer out and we go in and I'll go explain, because really what you need to be looking at is when that question comes up of why did this video make so much more money than this other one, or why did this video get so many more clicks in the first day than the other one? You know, you kind of want to know, what did I do right here? Not so you can try to go from square one of what can I do right, what can I go, how do I go from here? It's kind of to figure out what you already did that was right.
The best sessions I've ever had at looking at my analytics, I was usually doing it with a friend. Like Ethan from 180 Degrees from Average, he and I are like analytics buddies. We are constantly texting back and forth, looking at each other's analytics, helping each other out, because one of the things I found is just looking at it by yourself, sometimes you can like get lost and say, I'm not seeing anything, and having that second or third set of eyes on it will help you think about things that you're not thinking about. It's like, you know, it's like sometimes you're your own worst critic, and so having that friend helping you, I think it's really valuable.
So let's talk about some basic things that we want to equip people with to be able to look at so that they can gauge where they are and know what's working for them and what's not working for them. Like basically you need to know the core of your message, but you can tweak and improve what you're creating based on, you know, how people are responding to it, I guess. Like for me, one of the big things that I think is a really good thing to be able to look at is like click-through rate. You can't add value if people don't ever open your video. And so I think that's like a really good thing to look at and to understand what is working for you.
Completely agree. Actually, if you guys are watching along right now and you have your YouTube window open, let me just tell you how to do something. So if you go into the YouTube Studio Beta and you click on in the Analytics tab, and then you click on the Reach tab, on the right-hand side of the page, you're going to see this funnel. This funnel, I think, has all of your important analytics in one place. And just to your point, that click-through rate is probably one of the most important in that funnel, because if you're not getting people in the door to watch your video, you're never going to hold on to them and make them actually kind of give you the watch time you need. And then you're never going to really be able to convert them into long-time viewers who are consistently watching your videos and really make them part of your audience. And so as you think about driving people through that funnel and having in the measurement at each stage of that funnel, that is just so incredibly important for thinking about the success and health of your videos and your channel.
Yeah, that's really good. So what suggestions do you have for people on that? Like if they're looking at their click-through rate, they have no idea what it is, like how do they navigate that?
So think about click-through rate as this. That is the percentage of people that YouTube is showing your thumbnail for your video, and that percentage of the people who've seen the thumbnail that they're clicking on it. And you know, you might look at that and say, well, wait a minute, that sounds really depressing, because let's say I'm seeing a 6% click-through rate. That means that only 6 people out of 100 are actually clicking on my video when they get the chance to click on my video. But I gotta say, don't feel bad about that, because those big numbers are very normal. Like I will typically say that a good click-through rate is somewhere north of 6%. When you're up over 6%, that means you're getting a good, healthy flow of people who see your thumbnail and your title and say, yep, I want to watch that video. If you're somewhere between 6 and 4, you're not doing too bad. If you're like under 2, then that's when you really want to start to say, well, maybe I should be doing something differently and tweak it. And really the only things that people are making that judgment on clicking your video are your title and your thumbnail. And so then you really want to start to think about, well, do I want to change the style of my thumbnails? Are they attractive to people and appealing and making them want to click? Are they busy and they're hard to read or hard to tell what's going on? What about the title? Is it interesting? Is it creating a sort of sense of mystery for the audience that makes them want to maybe click and explore more? You start to ask yourself those types of questions when you start to see those low click-through rates.
I think we have an opportunity, like with a thumbnail and a title, to it's kind of like the the back of a book cover, like where typically you've got like this one paragraph to grab somebody, and really like you don't want to do clickbait. Nobody likes clickbait, being super like ridiculous with your titles, and when people get in and they click on it and then the video is not at all like what you were saying, or you made it sound super dramatic and then it was actually nothing at all, like that kind of thing, like people, they'll tire of that. But the intrigue of like, wow, I didn't expect to find this. If you truly didn't expect to find something and you found, that's an honest, intriguing title, And so I think that is really, really important. Now for me, one of the things that I do that I think may be different, but I have pretty good click-through rates, and so I feel pretty good about it, is because I do kind of different kinds of content all within the same channel. I have a lot of vlog content and then a lot of like tutorial content, garden tours, devotionals. I actually label it like this is devotional, this is a vlog, but it still has a title for what it is, and then I just kind of put that off to this side. And I don't know that that's like super normal, but because I knew I was kind of creating a lot of different content, I think that probably helps with watch times. There's kind of a dance here between your click-through rate and your watch times.
Well, those would be my two most important metrics. So, the click-through rate, which is effectively saying, are you getting people in the door? And then your audience retention rate and your watch time are basically saying, when people go in through that door, are they sticking around and are they continuing to watch? I think that is also as important as your click-through rate, because a big part of what you're ultimately trying to do if you want to get your videos to go viral and really pop and get some good growth is you want YouTube promoting your videos. And you're not going to be able to get YouTube to promote your videos if people aren't clicking on it and if people aren't staying to watch it while they click. To your point about not using clickbait, you might be able to get them in the door, but if you're doing egregious clickbait, you're not going to be able to keep them. And so that's where you need to start to think about, are you holding people's interest? Are you getting them to watch for a while? And are they staying? And if you can do that, then you're going to find some success.
Our success comes when people watch our video, but the real success comes when they watch the next one too, and the next one too, and the next one too. So like, I think that seeing your click-through rate and then your retention and watch times, those are really kind of your report card on whether, your content is working, essentially. Like, is this actually grabbing people? And because we're content creators, we're making shows, we're making something for people to consume. Are they consuming it? That's how we know that we're doing what our goal is to do.
I think that's exactly right. If you're not getting people to consume it, YouTube's not going to do the lifting for you and put it out there. And so using that retention and that watch time as the measuring stick of, are they really consuming it? That's a big part of how you need to think about it, not channel success, but trying to grow your channel.
So let's say somebody gets on and they notice that their click-through rates are kind of low and they feel kind of bummed and they're like, well, what do I do differently? Like, my advice at that point, if a person who, let's say they've got 100 videos out. So I'm not talking to like the brand spanking new person, because I really think that the brand new person needs to focus on finding their voice and knowing their story to tell more than they need to be worrying about this. I think this is more for the person who's got some content out and actually has something to look at. You don't have any analytics really to look at until you've got some stuff out. And my thing is at that point you want to kind of sit back and look and say, like, what videos are people watching longer? What's going on? And then go back and watch them yourself. Look at the things that if it has a really short watch time, go back and watch that video and think, why did this lose people? Like, what was going on here? And then if you have like a 2-minute clip of a time lapse of you doing something, you can go, oh, okay, they got bored in that, or whatever, and kind of have like an honest assessment using that analytic number as your guide to say, what did I do here that I might not want to repeat later?
Oh, completely. So one of the coolest tools in the YouTube analytics system is they have the audience retention graphs. And what this is a graph that will show you, and you can play your video side by side and see where your audience starts to drop off. And if you look at that retention graph, you can learn a ton of stuff. For example, about a year ago, I used to use like a little intro in the front of my channel. And what I would notice is, as soon as that intro, it was like, 10 seconds of like a picture of me and my wife and our farm and saying, oh, GoldShaw farm. And they had a little music. But within the first like 20 seconds of that video, every time the intro would play, it would be like I drop off a cliff. And I would lose like 35 to 40% of my audience right there just because of that channel intro. And so what I did was I just cut out the channel intro and stopped using it entirely. And it went from, not being as extreme. So it's like I probably lost like 20% in that first 20 seconds, which still is actually pretty good. And so that's like one of those little things that was just purely a lesson by looking at my analytics. I also noticed that there was, to your point, on like time-lapse shots where I would like show me, putting up some boards on a new building that I was building. And it would run for like 15 seconds. And after the first 5 seconds, I'd lose like 10% of the audience. And it would be like a big spike down. When you see stuff like that happen, it's good feedback for you to know, well, if I do less of that, people will stick around longer and my audience retention and my watch time is going to go up.
Yeah, I think it's like what you just said about the good feedback. I think that's really important because we do so want to drive home. Don't lose your voice. Don't, tell your story. Be who you are. And then at the same time we're saying, but you could adjust this a little bit. But really it's just the feedback of like, when I go down to my garden, if I'm doing B-roll or something like that where I'm panning around, I've found that if the clip of looking at one thing lasts more than 4 or 5 seconds, there's going to be a drop off. Like people, if there's a lot of that drag, like that lack of visual movement, people get impatient, and I have to be honest about who I am as someone who watches videos. I do too. I dropped my intro also because I noticed a big drop off in having a channel intro, even though it wasn't super long, and I thought it was really good and cute and the music was fun and all that stuff, but there was a drop off there. Or you'll see where it drops off and then comes back up where people are just skipping it, and they're going to the actual content. So I think that feedback has really changed how I edit. Like now, if I'm trying to walk through the garden and show stuff, I have about a 4-second limit on each thing that I'm looking at. If it pans, it's like, here's a flower, here's a tomato, here's a look over the garden, there's my dog, there's a chicken. Those clips are gonna be 4 or 5 seconds each, maximum. Because otherwise we lose that attention.
The lessons that we're both talking about right now are so core to those analytics, which plays into, and I know we talked about this in the last video, that idea of density and having a really dense, tight video that has a lot of content packaged in there. And then I think that makes all the difference. I got a question for you, Jess. As a big YouTuber who makes her living doing this, how do you think about earning money on videos? And what's important to think about when earning money on videos?
That's a really good question. And it's not something that gets talked about just a whole lot. For whatever reason, people are fairly hush-hush, and then sometimes people just come out of the gate with here's how much I earn on YouTube. And for me, it's there's not really a super great formula I've found. I feel like I can't put that on the forefront because it'll drive you crazy. Because literally, let's talk about CPM just real briefly, cost per mile, because this is something that is so varied. I still don't have it nailed down. I just don't understand, to be completely honest. So CPM is basically what advertisers are being charged per 1,000 views of putting an ad on your video. Is that right? Pretty much?
Yes, that's correct, yeah.
Okay, so, and that I don't know exactly how this works, but someone explained this to me and I was like, okay, that makes a lot of sense. But CPMs can range anywhere between $1.50 to $50, just depending on the market, who's watching your videos, how long they're watching your videos, their demographic, age demographic. I guess advertisers will pay a lot more to advertise to middle-aged women than they will to, underage children, because obviously one's spending a lot more money than the other. And so I've found that that's a really interesting area of analytics that you have zero control over. Am I right in that?
Yeah, you're totally right. And I actually have intentionally stopped paying attention to it because when you think about it,
it's so random.
There's nothing you can do. And I think that's one of the confusing things for people with the analytics. There are some analytics that you can control. Click-through rate.
Yeah.
While you can't turn a dial up and down, you can impact that. Audience retention and watch time, you can impact that. CPM is so difficult to, it's such an indirect metric to try to move that I personally don't put any attention to it either. And there's a lot of other metrics that fall into that same category, and for people to keep focus on those core metrics, I think is so much more important.
Absolutely. And so as far as making money on a YouTube channel, you get paid first for your ads. The ads that go on your videos, you're going to get paid for those. You don't get to pick them. You can go through Google AdSense. I actually have set on my channel that they cannot show anything sexually explicit. Basically none of the R-rated stuff is supposed to be on my channel because I am a family channel. A lot of people watch my videos with their children and with their families, and I don't want anything that is not reflective, of our values being forced on people while they're watching our videos. But, sometimes I can't control what they put on there. I've had some people get really mad. They're like, why did you play that? I swear I didn't do it.
Well, I'm actually just right now starting to make a little bit of money, just tiny bits. It's enough to cover some of the farm expenses and make some things balance out. But I remember I worked so hard to hit that milestone. So YouTube has this threshold, right, where you need 1,000 subscribers and 4,000 watch hours in a year. And it was like right towards the end of my first year of making videos that I actually just hit it. And I was like, oh boy, here it comes. Here comes the money train. And it was like, I think my first like month I made like, I don't know, $37 or something. And it's like one of those things where I know, and I talk to a lot of other YouTubers, where you make a big deal out of that milestone. And it is a big deal to a certain extent. You should feel really good about it. But I also see a lot of people who are below that milestone and kind of bum themselves out because they feel like they're missing out on something. And
Talking about making money and how we look at the analytics of that, and honestly saying, okay, I think that you can even look at your numbers, you can know your audience, you can go back to that core message of what your story is, who you are, what value you're adding to the world and to the YouTube space through your videos, and that's gonna kind of give you some gauge on the kind of content that you're creating, and also like with sponsorships and all that stuff like we were talking about.
You're absolutely right that that's your gauge. And that's going to be the thing that really helps you continue to evolve and grow your channel, is by being able to reflect on what's working for your channel and what's not. But at the end of the day, it's still going to come back to who you are and what you're all about. That is the most important thing.
Absolutely. And I think that really knowing deep down where your goal is and the value you're trying to add, there's not a bad number you're going to see on the screen that can change that. But again, it can be a map. It can just be a little bit of a compass, I guess, to say, okay, you're kind of a little off where you were wanting to go, or maybe scooch over this way a little bit, more for tweaking.